Okay, so starting off with SQE2. So obviously, you're only permitted to do SQE2 if you have either successfully completed SQE1 or you're exempt from doing SQE1. And the two main ways in which you can be exempt from doing SQE1 is either you are already on the pathway and you've got your legal practice course, or if you're like Irina and you have completed the QLTS exam, which is for people who are qualified in another jurisdiction and are looking to qualify in England and Wales. So the SQE2 assessment is one exam, but there are 16 stations. And they are going to be, those 16 stations test a mixture of written and oral legal skills. And there are 6 legal skills in total that you will need to get to grips with. Obviously, those skills are not going to be examined in a vacuum. So you are examined not only on the skills, but also on the practice areas which underpin those legal skills. And there are 5 practice areas, which are business, property, wills, and the 2 sorts of litigation. So that's crime and dispute resolution. And what's important to note is that those, and Irina will vouch for this, is that the 5 areas of law are very much drawn from SQE1. So all of the knowledge that is examined in SQE1 remains very important for SQE2. Essentially, 50% of the marks are going to be awarded for the skills, but 50% is awarded for the legal knowledge. So that legal knowledge is crucial for stage 2, so SQE2 as well as for SQE1. The other thing to note is the level at which you are examined in SQE2 is that SQE2 is testing the standard of a newly qualified lawyer. So it's testing you at that threshold standard at which you enter the profession as a day 1 solicitor. So that is why it's really important to make sure that you've got that grounding, not only in the skills, but also in that standard of knowledge from SQE1. In terms of how the assessment is run, so as it says on the slide, the SRA have devolved responsibility for the running of the assessment to an organisation called Kaplan, and they run all of the assessments. And the assessments are a mixture of online assessments. The written skills are all online, and then your oral skills, that is advocacy and client interviewing, are done in a face-to-face setting. As things currently stand, we're looking at some dates going forward for when the SQE2 assessments take place. The next date is October 2022, and then there are 3 dates in 2023, moving to 4 dates in 2024. So they're increasing the number of assessment points each year, and they'll be capped at, I think, 4 times a year. The other thing to note, I'll come back to the fees in a minute. The other thing to note is that they are very strictly timed. So each assessment has a strict time limit, varying in length, and maybe Irina will talk about that a little bit more. And the big difference between the SQE2 and the way in which you would have qualified if you did the LPC is that all of the exams are closed book. So that means you have no materials that you can take into the exam, which is why it's so important that you prepare thoroughly as possible, not only for the skills, but also for that legal knowledge that you'll need in order to undertake the assessment. The other thing to note is that it's a pretty intense diet of assessments. And again, I imagine Irina is going to talk about this in a little bit more detail. So those 16 assessment stations are managed over 5 days. Half days. So part of the time is spent on the written skills, and then the other part of the days are on the oral skills. Lastly, just one thing to note is that it is quite high stakes. You don't have to pass all 16 stations in order to pass SQE2, as long as you hit the pass rate that is determined by the SRA. And that isn't a set pass rate. It's determined using a range of algorithms and techniques, assessment techniques. But your So you don't have to, as I say, you don't have to pass all 16 stations. You just have to achieve that overall pass. However, if you don't achieve that overall pass, then you will be required to retake all 16 stations. So you can't bank any of those stations perhaps that you were successful in. It's an all or nothing, and that's why it's sort of high stakes. So that's an overview of the SQE2 assessment. So I'm just now going to move on to how our SQE2 preparation course gets you ready for those exams. And I'm just put here a really nice quote from one of our students about how they felt about our SQE2 preparation course, which we call Solicitors Legal Skills. So moving on to our SQE2 preparation course, we have two modes of study, which are all aligned, which are both aligned to the SQE2 assessment points. So we make sure that the end of each course ends with a little bit of time for some preparation, 2 or 3 weeks gap before the SQE2 exams themselves. So you can either do it on a full-time basis over 10 weeks, which is what Irina did. So she'll be able to give you some insight into that. And we also run a 20-week part-time course as well. But don't be fooled by the titles, part-time and full-time. They are both courses are quite intense. In terms of time that you need to devote to the course, you're looking about 25 to 30 hours a week for the 10-week course, and 15 to 20 hours a week for the part-time course. So it does require a time commitment. But what's good about the college, and hopefully this is something that can be endorsed by Irina, is that obviously the fact that it's online gives you some flexibility in terms of when you do your studying. There are some designated fixed scheduled meetings on a weekly basis where you'll meet with supervisors and other members of the team. But other than that, you will have a schedule of study to follow, but then it's up to you when and how you study that in the week. And I'll take you through that if that's something that you're interested in. So we obviously absolutely want to simulate the course with how it's going to appear in SQE2. So we obviously make sure we cover all 6 of the legal skills across the 5 practice areas, and that essentially means that you will be you'll have exposure to 24 study units, which will mean that you cover all of those 6 legal practice legal skills in those 5 practice areas. So in terms of materials, we provide you with a skills guide, both in hard copy and electronic form, which essentially is the basics for the skills. On top of that, you will have access to all of our online materials. As it says here, you'll have videos, online activities, lots of practice tasks, and then, as I say, on a weekly basis, and so this is something Irina can do, talks about, you'll have mock assessments which simulate the experience that you'll encounter on SQE2. We want to make sure, as well as support from sort of the mocks, we also make sure that you have group support as well. So we have surgeries on a regular basis where practice area experts will be available to answer any questions and also take you through any particular areas that they know students find challenging. And that's supplemented by discussion boards where you can post your questions, which we picked up by the subject matter expert. We also have regular town hall meetings, which the programme leader and module leader take in order to keep you on track, develop your progress, highlight any generic feedback from the mock assessments, and help you hone your assessment techniques in readiness for SQE2. As well as the subject matter expert support, you're also going to be supported by a one-to-one supervisor or personal tutor who will be there to support you throughout the course, help you with engagement and progression, as well as any pastoral issues that you may have. So in terms of where you end up at the end of the course, you'll have 6 assessments, which are again very much styled on the SQE2 assessments. So those will be your formal end of module assessments. And again, they are timetable to take place at a time just before your SQE2 assessment. So you've got all of that revision and consolidation at the right time. In terms of the cost of the course, our preparation course costs £2,300, and that is obviously in addition. I'll just go back to the slide because I forgot to mention the cost of the SQE2 assessment. So that's in addition to the SRA exam fee, which is currently priced at just under £2,500.